All right, everybody, welcome back. My name is Todd Lamb, and I am here with Dr. Anthony Capasso, and today we are doing a masterclass on brain health. If you joined us last week, we talked about three ingredients that can absolutely enhance brain function, neurocognitive function, and we discussed some lifestyle elements that people should be implementing in their life. And today we're going to discuss three more natural ingredients that you can get in a variety of ways. But I've asked Dr. Capasso here, who is an expert in this area, to discuss these ingredients in more detail. Dr. Capasso, welcome. Thanks for coming again.
Thank you, Todd, for having me. Really enjoyed our last session.
Yeah, perfect. So let's talk about these three ingredients. We've got. Is there a preference in the order that you want to discuss them?
Well, I think maybe let's start with ginseng.
Okay.
Ginseng's one of my favorite supplements, and it's been used for thousands of years in a bunch of different medicinal ways. But what I love about ginseng, it has such a protective effect on the blood-brain barrier. It's been shown to reduce the permeability of the blood-brain barrier, and we talked about this last time,
Right.
that barrier protects the brain and allows the bad things not to get into the brain. So ginseng is one of my favorites, and it's been studied in a multitude of ways. And the one thing that the one study that kind of just resonates with me was its protective effect in Alzheimer's and how it improved cognitive function. So
Okay.
not only does it kind of protect the blood-brain barrier, but it showed it also improved cognitive function. So I think it's one of my favorites, and I've used it in a lot of different ways for patients with head injuries. We use an extract of ginseng in a nasal spray
Oh, wow.
for concussions and those types of things. So phenomenal nutrient. One of my favorites because it's got such a broad spectrum of reducing inflammation, protecting that blood-brain barrier, and again, knowing that it also helps improve cognitive ability. That was kind of one of the supplements that really resonates with me, especially when we're talking about how to protect the brain and how to get
Right.
that brain kind of in a good place.
Yeah, and just to recap what we did discuss at length in the last episode was the fact that protecting and fortifying the blood-brain barrier is really at the heart of what we're doing when we're talking about neurocognitive, um, longevity, those types of issues that people are facing in their 40s these days, in their 50s, in their 60s. It isn't any longer just something that people in their 70s and 80s with potential for dementia or things like that. This is happening because of those
Yeah.
lifestyle factors that we talked about, such as stress, lack of sleep, those types of things. And so, building on that, ginseng being one, the next that you wanted to discuss was selenium.
Yeah, selenium. So before we get into selenium, the one thing that you mentioned, which is so important, is understanding that if that blood-brain barrier is broken, that's been linked to all these neurodegenerative diseases, from Parkinson's disease to dementias to cognitive problems, focus problems. And the one thing that I don't know that we discussed last time, but I think it's worth mentioning, is the inflammation that the immune system that helps protect us. When that blood-brain barrier is broken, now the inflammation gets into the brain and causes the brain inflammation. It's kind of that
Right.
brain on fire. And so having a way of protecting that blood-brain barrier, reducing that inflammation, I think is huge.
Okay, well, that's important to point out for everybody. I
Yeah.
I think, when we understand ultimately what the problem is, and the problem is what's been alluded to as leaky brain.
Right.
Um, what can we do every day, without having, to spend thousands of dollars on medications and that kind of thing, just to be preventative and protect that
Right.
barrier in a way that actually gives us quality of life later in life.
Absolutely. And I think the more nutrients that you use to support that blood-brain barrier is really, really important. And so selenium
Yeah.
is this, this trace element, this trace mineral that, not a very, not a very sexy mineral, but it's also been shown to improve the integrity of the blood-brain barrier and reduce that brain inflammation. So another, really interesting nutrient that does the same thing, and it also showed that it improved cognitive function.
Okay.
So when we improve that blood-brain barrier, when we reduce inflammation, the brain function works better and cognitively it gets better. So the more we overlap these nutrients, the better response that we're going to get.
Yeah, and I think if we were to define cognitive function, it's things like thinking on your toes quickly, being able to recall, not looking at somebody, staring at them, which is what I said last time, and not being able to pull their name. I don't like that one in particular. I find it was frustrating before I started supplementing. And again, just to highlight what drove me down this path for these discussions was undertaking learning how to fly helicopters, which had a high volume of information recall needed, and that cognitive function to be able to react in emergencies. That's the biggest thing when you're flying helicopters. They'll fly themselves, but when it's time to react in emergency, you need to be able to think in a split second, and that's what we're talking about specifically around cognitive function. So
Exactly.
selenium, good trace mineral. And then we wanted to talk about glutathione, and a particular type of glutathione. I assume acetyl.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
The acetylglutathione was, specifically shown to help improve and support brain function because it can get into the brain.
Okay.
Um, so glutathione, what is glutathione? And I have this conversation on a daily basis, and I did today with several of my patients. Glutathione is our body's master antioxidant. So this term antioxidant, what does that mean? How I describe it to my patients is really simple. I consider it like the sponge inside of every cell. And what it does is it soaks up all the stuff that damages the cell. If the cell doesn't have a bunch of damage around, then it works better, right? So
Right.
if the neuron, isn't being stressed because it has to deal with, toxic, materials or what we call free radicals, or the other term is called reactive oxygen species, then what happens is that the cells function better. The neurons fire quicker, right? You're able to recall much, much quicker. And your body constantly will feed this glutathione system. It constantly recycles it. And what we know is that the more glutathione in your body, the better kind of stress your cells can manage, right? And we know that low levels are linked to a whole slew of things, especially, poor outcomes and especially when it comes to brain.
Okay.
But we know that if glutathione is low, what happens is that blood-brain barrier dysfunctions, and it allows basically stuff to get into the brain that shouldn't be in there. So the glutathione protects those cells that line the blood-brain barrier. Um, and they saw that it also improves the injury that can occur after strokes and those types of things. And again, it's because it's soaking up all of those free radicals and all that kind of injury that occurs. So glutathione, one of my favorite antioxidants, it's your body's main antioxidant. And if it's low, then your body's going to have difficulty repairing itself. This is that kind of master antioxidant to repair those cells, repair that blood-brain barrier, soak up all that injury that's in there, and allow your neurons and your cells to just be healthy and respond the way that they should.
Perfect. I think, it's important to understand. Again, we're focusing on the brain here, but having those types of nutrients in your body impacts a broad range of health,
Oh yeah.
from anything from brain to cardiovascular to all of these different functions that we have in our body. So it's never a bad thing to
Yeah.
be
No.
supplementing. And I think sometimes the danger around supplementing is that we want that very quick biofeedback, that automatic reaction.
Mhm.
And that isn't necessarily the case. I think sometimes the degree to which we are assisting or recuperating our body from damage and that kind of thing, if we've had a lifestyle that is very difficult, uh, it can take some time. Probably you've seen this extensively. It can take some time of taking these things, onboarding them, getting them up
Oh
to
yeah.
levels of efficacy in your body that they can actually do their job. Do you see people, where it takes a bit of time, and others, it's 2-3 days and they feel like $1,000,000?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're absolutely right. It really depends on where you're starting from. Like if you've got a significant amount of brain inflammation and we have to calm that system down, it takes a while to do that. It's, uh, one of the analogies sometimes that I'll use is when, from a brain standpoint, when patients have strokes, they're trying to retrain the brain to learn something new. Like how long does it take a baby to walk typically, right? It's months. So it's the same thing. So our goal is that there was some injury. We have to figure out, the degree of that injury. And then once we understand that degree, then what are the things that we can do to improve it and allow the brain to heal? Our brain has this incredible ability called neuroplasticity to heal itself. And we talked about last time about the propolis, increasing this um, um, nutrient called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which
Right.
I consider kind of like miracle grow for the brain. It helps neurons repair themselves and it helps them just function at the level that they need to function at. But it takes time. Injury in the brain is one of those things that's a slower process, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I think, you point something out that I believe is really exciting. I think there was a time in history where we believed, any type of traumatic brain injury couldn't be healed and couldn't, there was no natural process for assisting or recovering. Whereas today, all the studies that are available definitely point in a much different direction, and people are recuperating from some pretty significant injuries.
Yeah, I would agree. And it really takes a broad approach. Like there's not one thing that's going to work, but when you start combining good sleep, stress management, exercise, hydration, and really, your diet, getting healthy fats, omega-3s for the brain are great.
Right.
Even the phospholipids, which we didn't talk about, another really, really good fat for the brain you can get from sunflower seeds.
Okay.
And so they're involved with allowing the nutrients to get in and out of the neuron. So just eating a healthy diet, getting good sleep, managing stress and high cortisol, those are the things that damage the brain. And you have to have that package involved with your nutrients, the proper nutrients in a way that can really help your brain heal itself and get to where it needs to be.
Yeah, well, I think that you've done a nice job in creating, a natural supplement for people, uh, to enable them to get those various levels that are actually at the level of efficacy. It's not just, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. You've
Right.
actually done some work and formulated a
Yeah.
proper supplement called Pure Nero. And so, before, or maybe not before we end, but what we'll do is, at the bottom of this, wherever we end up putting this interview, whether it's Facebook or YouTube or what have you, we'll make sure everybody has a link to a page that will enable them to investigate Pure Neuro a bit further. But or we have a presentation that we have uh, up for you at getpurenero.com. It's a longer presentation. I know people sometimes don't want to watch a full presentation, but it's very informative in terms of the problems that we're facing, and then the steps that we can take to remedy those problems. So that site is getpurenero.com, and then we'll put up some links to a page down below that people can go if they just want to read more about the different ingredients that we've talked about in these 2 interviews. So with that, I won't take up any more of your time, because I know you've been in the office all day today seeing patients. And so, you're doing God's work out there.
Yeah.
And we thank you. And I thank you for taking the time to chat with us.
Oh, you're welcome, Todd. The only thing that I would add is how, the responses that I've seen from Pure Neuro out of my patients have been incredible. So it's one of those nutrients. Like, it's hard to find stuff that we see really good clinical efficacy. And like I said, sometimes we'll see it in the first week or 2. Sometimes it takes months.
Yeah.
But, that's what's so encouraging to me, is that, my patients are getting better and they're telling me, hey, I really, really like this stuff, and I want to stay on it. So that, that's the only thing I wanted to add, at the end, because it's been great. I mean, any way that I can help my patients naturally, I'm all about it.
Yeah.
I don't like to prescribe meds unless there's a real reason to. And usually when we're prescribing medications, the system's not working great,
Yeah.
So
well, that's the interesting thing. You see some of these supplements out in a Walmart or wherever, just on an Amazon, and yours can't be found. They can only be found in your office or on these particular websites. That's it, because there are just too many fakes out there and garbage out there. And so I think it's important that we highlight that this stuff is not available just anywhere. So
yeah, that's true.
All right, Dr. Capasso. Thanks again so much, and we'll look forward to chatting again soon.
You're welcome. Have a great evening.
You too. Bye now.
Bye.
Did you know that simply increasing the power supply to your brain can sharpen your memory and get rid of brain fog? Pure Nero uses just a few simple ingredients to give a powerful, natural boost to your brain's power supply.
I noticed all of a sudden it was like a light went on.
My brain fog was much better.
I've been able to recall things a lot faster.
What is it exactly that powers up your brain, though? Well, your thoughts and memories are basically made from electricity, and brain waves are pulses of electric current running through your brain cells. Each thought or memory is coded in a specific pattern of electric waves. So when someone says cheesecake, your brain creates specific electric patterns, and you remember the taste, the texture, and even how eating it makes you feel. But what if your brain runs low on electric charge? Or worse, what if the electric waves in your brain get shorted out? That's exactly what happens when you have the word cheesecake on the tip of your tongue and it just won't come out. That's what happens when you forget your glasses are on your head and then spend 5 minutes looking for them. In fact, it's the cause of all the brain fog and all the embarrassing senior moments you may be experiencing. It's why most of the so-called brain boosters don't work, because they don't increase your brain's power supply, which means they don't address the real root cause of memory problems and brain fog. Listen, although your brain makes up only 2% of your body weight, it guzzles up a quarter of all your body's energy, and it generates all the power inside something called mitochondria. Tiny organelles in every brain cell that take the food you eat and the oxygen you breathe and turn it into the electric power your brain needs for sharp memory and clear thinking. To keep up with the huge demand for electricity, you have 2 million mitochondria inside every one of your brain cells, which allows for the powerful electric pulses that form thoughts and retrieve memories. It's the reason why Dr. Anthony Capasso created Pure Nero. It's the world's first brain health formulation ever designed specifically to nourish and support your brain's power-producing mitochondria. So unlike mere brain booster supplements, Pure Nero actually gives your brain the raw electric power it needs to function at its best. Since Dr. Capasso started making Pure Nero available outside his clinic, it has gone viral.
For the last couple of years, I've kind of been in a fog, a brain fog, where it seemed like I was a little detached with reality. And then about 2 weeks later, I wasn't thinking about it, but I noticed that all of a sudden the fog had kind of lifted. I noticed all of a sudden it was like a light went on.
I have hypothyroidism, and so when my thyroid levels are abnormal, I tend to get the brain fog and also some short-term memory problems. Definitely within the first 3 days, I started to note that my memory, short-term memory, was actually more improved. Also, my brain fog was much better. It's working so well for me, and I'm amazed. I do take a lot of supplements, and this is probably the best supplement that I take.
Over the past 2 years, I've had issues with my memory. I've had trouble thinking. I've had trouble sleeping. After using Pure Nero, it helped me sleep through the night fully the first time I've used it. And ever since I've taken it, I've been able to recall things a lot faster and think a lot faster. And I'm extremely grateful for it.
Customers love the effects. People are simply getting way more out of their lives. If you're ready to give your brain's power supply a powerful, natural boost and experience the life-changing benefits of razor-sharp memory, bulletproof mental agility, and seemingly endless ability to concentrate, then it's time to choose the only doctor-developed solution designed specifically to restore the power output of your brain's mitochondria to 100%.